Good morning. Can everyone hear me? All right. Thank you. We're going to take a look today to begin this year at Yeshaya, Perek, Yud, Aleph. We ended Yeshaya, Perek, Yud last week. We talked about the miracle of Sancheiriv's 185,000 soldiers dying in their sleep on the night of Pesach. And there, the 185,000 soldiers or officers are referred to as great large trees, and God will cut down these large trees. So that is the mashal that's being used for a powerful army, great, tall, powerful trees, and they will be cut down. And now we go to Perek Yud Aleph, and in contradistinction to these huge, big, scary trees, we're now talking about the Bnei Yisrael as tiny little tree stumps. And from these tiny little tree stumps will grow great, powerful trees. We talked last week about the connection between Perek Yud, the end of Perek Yud, the Nevuah, by Yeshaya, that the Ribono Shel Olam will chop down the great army of Sancheiriv when he tries to attack Yerushalayim. And now we go into the Perek that is going to describe Mashiach. And as we mentioned last week, the Radak says in Perek Yud Aleph, the connection between Perek Yud and Perek Yud Aleph is that Perek Yud is this unbelievable miracle. At the end of Perek Yud, 185,000 soldiers die in their sleep. And Perek Yud Aleph talks about Mashiach coming, which means we're discussing to a certain extent Kibbutz Goliath, the Jews coming together from the four corners of the earth, which will be described in the Perek Yud Aleph. And the Radak says that if you think you've heard of something miraculous, like 185,000 soldiers dying in their sleep at the end of Perek Yud, so to speak, you haven't heard anything yet. Because in Perek Yud Aleph, we're going to be talking about Kibbutz Goliath, bringing Jews back from the four corners of the earth. And that's going to be a bigger miracle than even 185,000 soldiers dying during the night. That's what we mentioned last week. And I think it's very, very important to remember this. When we talk about ourselves in Eretz Yisrael, we're not talking about living a miracle, which is true. When we look outside as a Kibbutz Goliath, and the miracles that go on in Eretz Yisrael are daily, every second, which is true everywhere. Every life is a miracle every second. But here, things can be seen a lot more clearly. If you live here, you understand that the day-to-day living here is a miracle, especially now. But not only are you living a miracle, when you come here, you're a walking miracle. The fact that you left everything behind and came here and settled here means that you're a walking miracle. Rabbi Yaakov Emden, in one of his introductions to his Siddur, Rabbi Yaakov Emden Siddur, he writes that when he sees a Jew, he believes himself that he's looking at a miracle that's even greater than the miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf. When we talk about miracles, we say like the ultimate, it's like Kriyas Yamsuf, when God parted the sea on the seventh day of Pesach and the Jews were able to walk through. Yaakov Emden says, if I just see a Jew, it's a greater miracle than Kriyas Yamsuf. Yaakov Emden lived in the 1600s, late 1600s, and he is living at a time of history post, of course, Inquisition, post all the torture, the pain, the Crusaders, Shalmaniki, and he says to see a Jew on the street, it's just a miracle. You see a Jew, and it's a miracle that Jews still exist. That's what Rabbi Yaakov Emden said about seeing a Jew. And today, what Rabbi Yaakov Emden would say, I suspect, is he wouldn't even believe what's in front of his eyes. Not only as they're living Jews in Eretz Yisrael with a vibrant Torah community here. And so we are walking miracles And we hope that the Ribono Shalom, we pray that the Ribono Shalom opens the eyes, the mind, the ears, the heart of the Jews in Chutz La'aretz, and they join us to become walking miracles. And part of Kibbutz Goliath will be discussed today in Perek Aleph. So the pasuk says, and again, as I've mentioned, this is the Haftorah that's said in Chutz La'aretz on the 8th day of Pesach. We don't have an 8th day of Pesach in Eretz Yisrael. In Chutz La'aretz, they have an 8th day of Pesach, and this is the Haftorah for the 8th day of Pesach, the Haftorah of Mashiach. V'yatza choter migeze Yeshaya, we're on page 96 of the Art Scroll. Excuse me. V'yatza choter migeze Yeshaya, v'neitzeh misharashav yifra. A staff will grow from the stump of Yeshai, and a shoot will sprout from his roots. In other words, the Navi is telling us that in contradistinction to what I just told you will happen to the great army of Sancheriv, these huge trees will be chopped down. This little tree that's already been chopped down, which is the house of Bnei Yisrael, Bnei and Yehuda, those stumps will once again give off great large trees. V'nacha alav ruach Hashem, ruach chachma uvina, ruach eitza gvura, ruach das v'yiras Hashem. This stump that will grow from this tree that will grow from the stump of Yeshai, meaning the Melech HaMashiach, that's how the Mefarshim learn. Rashi explains that clearly that this Perek is talking about Melech HaMashiach. So the pasuk says that this Mashiach, the spirit of Hashem will rest on him, a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and strength, a spirit of knowledge and fear of Hashem. So that's what the pasuk means in English. Let's look at the pasuk again in Lashon Kodesh, page 96. V'nacha alav, and will come to rest on him. In other words, we're not talking about a prophet who prophesizes and then goes off and lives his life, and then God reveals himself again to the prophet. We're talking about a level of prophecy where the level of prophecy rests upon him. V'nacha alav ruach Hashem, ruach chachma uvina, ruach eitzu gevura, ruach das v'yiras Hashem. We're talking about an amazing human being. And I emphasize and underline the word human being because we are Jewish people. And Mashiach is a human being. He's born from a human father and mother, not from some mythical whatever. He's born from a human mother and father, and he is human. On page 97, the Art Scroll makes the following comment in the left-hand column towards the bottom: a spirit of wisdom and understanding. Wisdom is the ability to amass knowledge and to know clearly and remember all that one has learned. Bina, understanding, is the ability to deduce more knowledge from the material already accumulated. So Chachma is knowledge. You know things. And what you do with it is question. A person can have a world of knowledge, but not much understanding. You have very wise people who are not understanding people. They can quote a lot of things to you, but they may not understand what's happening around them. They may not understand themselves. Understanding the word bina means lahavin dava mitoch dava. I can deduce. If I learn A, from A I can deduce a new fact B. I am not left with just with that with which I'm taught. I can deduce new things from that which I have been taught. So Mashiach will have this capacity to have this tremendous amount of chachma, but that chachma will lead him to a greater understanding of things by the power of deduction. The Rambam in Hilchos Malachim says that the Melech HaMashiach, David ben Yishai, will be smarter. He'll be a greater Chacham than Shlomo HaMelech, which we consider right now to have been the ultimate wise man. Rambam says that Mashiach will be wiser than Shlomo HaMelech. But when it comes to his level of prophecy, he says that Mashiach will almost be like Moshe Rabbeinu. But no one can ever reach the level of prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu, even Melech HaMashiach. So in terms of knowledge and understanding, he can be a great person, even greater than Shlomo. In terms of prophecy, he'll be a great prophet, but he will not be the prophet at the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. The next piece of art scroll on page 97, Ruach Eitzo Gevura, a spirit of counsel and strength. He will have the ability to advise others because he will possess a deep understanding of human nature. He will have the strength of character and courage to face any difficulty that may arise. Often people have all the evidence and verify the facts, but not interpret them correctly. The power for the Messiah's judgment will be such that he will assess all the elements correctly and arrive at the correct verdict. This explanation of the art scroll incorporates several ideas. They come from the Radak. The first idea is he will have the ability to advise others because he will possess a deep understanding of human nature. The Melech HaMashiach will understand people. And believe that today, when we get to talk a little later in the Shir about Reb Shimon bar Yochai and Rabbi Akiva, we're going to talk about this idea that great men have a deep understanding of human nature, and they're able to associate with people, and they're able to give advice to people because they understand the human condition. This is the opposite idea in America, other places of the world, but America, they use the words the ivory tower. People go to fancy colleges, they go to Yale, Harvard, and they spend years studying there in their ivory tower. And they're not familiar with the actual day-to-day trials and tribulations of a man, so that they really can't give anyone advice. And as many commentators have said, when you talk about whether you like him or you don't like him, whether you're neutral, doesn't make a difference. President Trump is very different than anyone that came before him. And one of the reasons he's different than anyone that came before him is we've had presidents, senators, congressmen, many of them come from ivory towers. They come from very rich backgrounds. They went to Harvard, Yale, they went to the finest colleges in America, whether they deserved to get in there or didn't deserve to get in there. Their parents paid their way in there. We know there's a whole scandal in America about famous Hollywood stars whose kids can't even read English that managed to get into some of the finest universities in America because they paid for them to get in. So there's this ivory tower, and the ivory tower is a place of isolation. You go into this place and you study philosophy, you write your master's in philosophy, you get your doctorate in philosophy, and basically you've been on a college campus or in your home on your laptop writing about philosophy and all the great questions that occur in philosophy. I say that sarcastically. All these great questions. Does God exist? Where is God? Who is God? Where's the hole on the bagel? Where did that dough go? How many angels can dance on the head of a pin? All these incredibly important questions for mankind to know the answers to. And they spend years in this environment. And then you let them loose, and they don't understand what the average man on the street is living and their challenges. And the tragedy that has occurred in America is that many of these people get unleashed into government and don't have a clue about how the average person on the street lives. So they sometimes become radical and extreme liberals. They have no idea how the average man lives. They know they've lived a life of great advantage. And the only way they can make up for what they see as their lives of advantage is just by pouring out lollipops to everybody all the time and making life one big carnival. The opposite extreme is some of these people have no idea what the average man needs to live and what his challenges are, and therefore they're not sympathetic to those challenges at all, which is another radical type of politics. And we see this in America. There are radicals on both sides. There are those that can't seem to empathize with the people who are less fortunate than they are. And then there are those people who seem to believe that the less fortunate are miscanim. They can't take care of themselves. And the only way to take care of them is for the government to step in and take care of them. If the government doesn't step in and take care of them, they won't be taken care of. These problems arise. And I say this to my children sometimes. If America looks the way it looks right now, you need to imagine what the college campuses in Harvard, Yale, Berkeley, University of Chicago, you need to imagine Columbia, you need to imagine what is being educated on these campuses today. We're talking about the radical left. Some of the things you see are just absolutely amazing. There was a college professor from some college about a week ago who made some crazy statement about Trump and coronavirus. It was an African-American professor, a lady at some college, and she said something vile about Trump and the coronavirus. And on her Twitter account, which the news posted, she said, "I'm not going to apologize. I'm a tenured professor, and I don't need to apologize." So I got interested in who is this tenured professor? Is she a professor of math, a professor of science, professor of biology, a professor of accounting, a professor of computer technology? What is she a professor of that she's tenured? And she's a professor of transgender and feminist studies. I didn't even know there was such a thing on a college campus that a person can major in transgender feminist studies. And the question that dawned on me is, after you get your $200,000 bachelor's or master of arts, whatever you get for this, what do you do when you go into the streets? What do you put on your resume? What job do you want? Because you have a master in transgender feminist studies. What do you do with that? I don't know. But these are people that they literally spend their lives theorizing, making problems. Now, if this is what is in the college campuses today, and they're all over, and they're educating young children, and these Columbia, NYU, Harvard, Yale young people are going to grow up with these degrees, radical thinkers, and in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, Mashiach will be here. But imagine if these young people are released onto America and they become senators, congressmen, congresswomen, presidents, vice presidents. If you think America is radical today, you can't imagine the wave that's coming off these campuses to take over America. They are simply not familiar with the needs of the day-to-day person. The needs of the day-to-day person, as an example, America, without getting into religion. The day-to-day needs of a person is he needs his job, he needs a parnos, he needs to take care of his family, he needs decent public education. He needs these things. He doesn't need someone to lecture him about transgender studies. It's just not something that concerns him as he's going through life. He wants to know that a government can provide him with a good life. He has a parnosa, he has a family, he has safety, he has security. These people are far removed from understanding the challenges of the average person. And so we have a vision here from Yeshaya, of a Melech HaMashiach who's filled with Eitzah Ugevura. He will have the ability to advise others because he will possess a deep understanding of human nature. And human nature, what is human nature? Human nature is if there are 8 billion people on planet Earth, there are 8 billion human natures. There's not a human nature. Every human being has his own life experiences. He's come from different places. He's come from different backgrounds. He's come from different families. He's faced different challenges. And all these make up a person, becomes the person's life story. And everybody needs to be understood. And if you remember when we were talking about Shlomo HaMelech and Sefer Malachim, the Rebbeinu Shalom came to Shlomo HaMelech and said, Shlomo, ask me whatever you want, and I will give it to you. And Shlomo HaMelech didn't ask for wealth. He didn't ask for palaces. He didn't ask for anything. He could have. He asked for one thing. He wanted a leiv lahavin, a heart that understands, that can listen to people, the Pasuk says. So we always, again, as we go through elementary school, we say that God appeared to Shlomo and said, what would you like? And Shlomo said, I want to be the wisest man in the world. And God said, okay, you can be the wisest man in the world. That's not what the Psukim say. The Psukim say that when God appeared to Shlomo and said, what can I give you? Shlomo said, leiv lahavin. I want a heart that can understand. I want a heart, the Pasuk says, that can hear and understand people. You hear and understand people, you can be a good king, you can be a good leader. And the ultimate leader, human leader, is the Melech HaMashiach, and he will possess this deep understanding of human nature. When Moshe Rabbeinu was told by God that he will not be able to go into Eretz Yisrael, and that a new leader will be appointed in his place, eventually becomes Yeshua. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Ribono Shel Olam, what I would like to see as the next leader of the Jewish people is Ish Asher Ruach Bo, a man that has a spirit. And Rashi explains, a man that has a spirit means that Moshe Rabbeinu was asking God, please find a person who will understand the spirit of every Jew, who will be able to deal with every Jew as an individual and not collect them together as one size fits all. Everybody has their own needs and everybody needs to be understood. That incredible amount of understanding, the understanding of billions of people and the individual needs. There's collective needs and there's individual needs. The ability to understand as an individual billions of people is an example of this tremendous bracha that the Ribono Shel Olam gives our Melech HaMashiach. So that is, he will have the understanding of human nature. And then the comment goes on page 97 and says, he will have the strength of character and courage to face any difficulty that may arise. And that is part of the ability to give advice. People who shy away or sink when things get difficult, they just walk away from challenges, don't face up to their challenges. They are looking for other people who have faced challenges to give them advice. A weaker person who can't deal with the situation he's in, he's looking for a person to help him. A stronger person who maybe went through something similar. He says, can you help me? I'm going through this. Perhaps you've gone through this and you have an experience that can strengthen me and give me chizuk. Well, the Melech HaMashiach will have the strength of character and he will have the courage to face any difficulty that will arise. And there'll be many difficulties and challenges that will arise to the Melech HaMashiach. He will fight wars. We'll get to that. And he will have the courage to face this. And because he has the courage to face these things, he can advise other people. Going to back to page 96 and verse 3. V'haricho b'yiras Hashem. V'lo lemare einav yishpot, v'lo lemishma oznav yochiach. He will be imbued with a spirit of fear Hashem, and he will not need to judge by what his eyes see, nor decide by what his ears hear. Rashi explains the first word in Pasuk Gimel, Vaharicho, from the word Ruach, a spirit. So Vaharicho, he will have a spirit of Yirah Shamayim. The Radak, and this is based on the Gemara, the Radak says Vaharicho comes from Reach, smell. The Melech HaMashiach will have an incredible power of smell. And now let's read the Pasuk, what that means. V'haricho b'yiras Hashem. He will have such an incredible power of smell that if a person stands in front of him without even saying a word to the person, without the person saying a word to him, he'll be able to smell whether the person has fear of God. You'll be able to smell what kind of person you are. And therefore he will not have to judge by looking at evidence. And he will not have to decide things by listening to evidence. He will be able to look at people and know what all the facts are. We're talking about now a wisdom that is beyond anything we understand today. He'll be able to look at a person, and we're not talking now about the Kabbalistic concepts of reading a person's face or reading a person's palms. We're talking about now a tremendous sense of what the Pasuk is now calling a reach, a scent, a smell that is emanating from a person. Melech HaMashiach will be so sensitive that he'll be able to smell what kind of person is standing in front of him. And therefore, if a question comes up between two people, he'll be able to say, this is right and wrong, because he will smell what's going on between the two people. And so the Radak on page 97 in the Art Scroll on the right-hand side, middle of the page, verse 3, Radak explains the verse metaphorically. He relates Vaharicho to Reach, smell. The Mashiach will be imbued with a sense of smell, enabling him to have a lightning-like intuitive grasp of what is right and what is not. His perceptions of things will be as keen as one's sense of smell, and he will not have to rely on the testimony of others. This pasuk becomes a source for an incident that happened in Klal Yisrael, which we're going to talk about a bit later when we talk about Lag BaOmer. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says that this ability, V'haricho b'yiras Hashem, means he'll be able to smell whether a person has Yirah Shamayim, what kind of person stands in front of him. Now remember, when God created man, it says, Vayitza Hashem Elokim es ha'adam afa min ha'adama. When the Rebbeinu Shalom created man, he created a physical body, dust of the earth. He put in the earth, so that he drew a picture in the earth, head, eyes, arms, feet, etc. And it wasn't a living thing. And then the pasuk says, "Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chaim," and in his nostrils he put a breath of life. That breath of life is the neshama. The neshama went into this dust of the earth, and vayhi ha'adol nefesh chaya, man stood up and was a living being. Life comes through the life-giving source. Neshama came into our Adam Harishon, from who we all come, came through the nostrils. Other than that, a person is an Offer Min Ha'adama. He is dust of the earth, and he returns after 120 years to dust of the earth when the neshama leaves his body. The neshama entered Adam Harishon through his nostrils, and that became a life-giving source. And so even today, not even besides the spiritual level of the neshama having entered through the nostrils, the breathing system, our respiratory system, occurs through the nostrils. We breathe and should be breathing through our noses. People like to breathe through their mouths, and doctors talk about we're supposed to be breathing through our nostrils. So the spiritual life that we were given by God was put into us through our nostrils and neshama. The physical life is inhaling and exhaling through the nostrils. So this is the place, the nostrils are a place of life. And lo aleinu today, the corona, we know, attacks the respiratory system, lo aleinu. So this is the place of life. It is a place of spiritual life. It is a place of physical life. So when we say the Melech HaMashiach will have such a sensitive sense of smell, that with his sense of smell, he can know who people are. We're talking about a sense of smell that's highly developed because that's the place of spiritual and physical life. And through that sense of smell, he'll be able to detect what's going on with people and what's going on in the world. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says that the Melech HaMashiach will be murach vadoyim. Literally, he'll be able to smell what's going on. Lahavdil, I don't know if this is where the saying came from, but they're saying in America, I smell a rat. Yeah, sometimes we say that when I smell something going on here. This is the kind of words, the kind of phrases we use. I smell something going on here. Something doesn't smell right. I smell a rat. We have all these sayings about smell. And the smell is the place, it's very sensitive, it's very adin, but you can begin to sense something off with smell. And then we investigate it further. Something doesn't smell right here. I need to check into this. The Melech HaMashiach will have a much more sensitive smell than I need to check into this. He will know all the facts, and as the comment said, he'll know right and wrong by his sense of smell. The Melech HaMashiach is Murach Vadoyim. And this brings us to the question of Bar Kochva, which we'll perhaps deal with a bit later. The Bar Kochva revolution with which Rabbi Akiva teamed up, he was basically almost a motivating force behind the Bar Kochva revolution, approximately 50 years after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. We've all read or learned or heard about the Bar Kochva revolution. And Bar Kochva, Rabbi Akiva deemed him to be the Melech HaMashiach. Which Mashiach? That's what we'll talk about a little later in the shir about Lag BaOmer. But Rabbi Akiva deemed him to be Melech HaMashiach. And there's a lot of writing about this. Was Rabbi Akiva? It turns out that Bar Kochva was killed or died, whatever it is. But the Gemara talks about Bar Kochva as they tested him. They wanted to know if he's the real Mashiach by this quality of Murach Vadoyim. They wanted to see if he can tell right from wrong through the sense of smell. And eventually he wasn't able to do that. Rabbi Akiva, there's been this discussion ever since the Bar Kochva incident, 50 years after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. So this is almost a 2,000-year discussion. Did Rabbi Akiva make a mistake, chas v'sholom? It seems he supported a person and motivated a person to rebel against the Romans, which lo aleinu seems to have led to a catastrophe where hundreds of thousands of Jews were killed. According to one historian, over 500,000 Jews were killed when the Romans came and put down the revolution of Bar Kochva. Did Rabbi Akiva make a mistake? And some people who write history say, yeah, Rabbi Akiva made a mistake, and Bar Kochva wasn't Mashiach. That's a very difficult place for me personally to be, especially in our times where we are taught about Das Torah and our Gedolim don't make mistakes, and that's not a subject we're going to touch even today. But you can imagine if we live today in 2020 and we are told that Das Torah means that Gedolim don't make mistakes, whatever that means. Now, if we go back to the days of Rabbi Akiva, the idea that Rabbi Akiva made a mistake, and not just a mistake in halacha chas v'sholom, he made a mistake of such huge significance by looking at a person and completely missing it. He thought that someone was Mashiach and he wasn't. that is very hard for me to personally accept, although there seem to be authorities that support that view, perspective, and very important authorities. There are other authorities that say that Rabbi Akiva didn't make a mistake. And we'll take a look at that Blinedo when we talk about Lag BaOmer. Rabbi Akiva, of course, is the big start of the Lag BaOmer story because he's the one that was Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's Rebbe. At any rate, the pasuk here, pasuk Gimel says, "V'haricho b'yiras Hashem." Rashi says, "V'haricho" means he will have the spirit. He will have the spirit. Haricho comes from ruach. V'haricho b'yiras Hashem. He will have the spirit of fear of Hashem. The Radak says haricho means he will smell. He will smell Yerushalayim, and therefore, lo lamari einav yishbod v'lo lamishmaos and mishmaos no yochiach. He will not have to judge by looking at evidence. He will not have to judge by hearing evidence. He'll all be clear in front of him through his sense of smell. Pasuk Daled v'shofat b'tzedek dalim. He will judge the poor people right in a righteous manner. In other words, he will not favor rich people. He will mete out justice as necessary, even if a gevir is in front of him, a very respectable, a very influential, a high caliber person is in front of him, and there's also a poor person in front of him, nobody will find favor in his eyes. It'll be right versus wrong. Someone's right and someone's wrong. There will be no other calculation, and therefore he will be able to judge with righteousness the poor. And he will be able to rebuke with fairness. The word for is missing from page 99 of the English, and that's the way the Mepharshim explain it. He will be able to rebuke the powerful people in order to protect the humble people. Same idea. Humble person and a very haughty person, a very politically connected person, a very special person. The Melech Mashiach doesn't know from all these yichus business. Melech Mashiach just sees two people in front of him. He doesn't really care who came from where. He doesn't care about who has more money or who has more power. Those days are over. The days that we live in called the protectia days. Who do you know? And your father was this, and your mother was this, and your uncle was this, and your brother is this, and so we'll give you a better shake than you deserve. Those days are going to be over. He only has one criteria by which he judges, and that is right versus wrong. Behika eretz b'shevet piv. He will be able to slay. He will be able to strike. Be able to defeat armies with the words of his mouth. Uvaruach sfos of Yomis Rasha. And with the breath of his lips, he will be able to slay the wicked. The Mepharshim tell us, and the article brings it down on page 98 at the bottom of the page. And this is something that, again, everything's been a Shemayim. We're at this place on Lag BaOmer Tovshin Pei, and what we're going to learn for the next minute or two before we finish the Yeshaya Shir is going to connect to the Mido Shir, and that's going to connect to the Lag BaOmer Shir. It says he's going to be able to defeat, kill evil with the breath of his lips. There is Targum Yonason. On the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, there's Targum Onkelos. Onkelos Hager. Onkelos the convert is the one that, he's not the original author, but he's the one that passed down to us the Onkelos, the Aramaic translation to the Torah, which we all use. If we do Shnayim Mikra Vecha Targum every week, we read each pasuk twice and the Targum once. The Targum Onkelos And Onkelos lived in the time of the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. In fact, Onkelos, according to one version in the Gemara, depends what your girsa is in the Gemara, Onkelos was a nephew of Titus, who actually reigned over the destruction of Yerushalayim and the Churban Beis Hamikdash. He was a nephew of Titus, and he converted to Judaism, and he becomes the transmitter, although not the original author, of Targum Onkelos. We don't have Targum Onkelos on the books of Nevi'im. What we have on the books of Nevi'im is Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. And Yonasan ben Uziel was a student of Hillel. He was the greatest student of Hillel, the Gemara says. And he's the person, when a bird flew over his head while he was learning, he learned with such amount of passion that he brought down the fire of Har Sinai. When the Torah was given, there was a fire on Har Sinai. And when he learned, the fire came down, and the bird that flew over his head while he was learning would be consumed in that fire. That's Yonasan ben Uziel, the Talmud of Hillel. This is the end now, towards the end of the second Beis Hamikdash. And he wrote the Targum, the Aramaic translation, to the books of the Nevi'im. And on this pasuk, where it says that the Melech HaMashiach will kill an evil, he will wipe out evil. Targum Yonasan, this now at the bottom of page 98, Targum Yonasan identifies the wicked person as Armilus Rishia, Armilus the wicked, which is a variant of Romulus, the founder of Rome, a name that is often used synonymously with Gog, indicating that Gog will be a descendant of Esau. Gog is the king, the war of Gog and Magog. Gog is the king who, according to Ezekiel, Yecheskel's prophecy, will invade Eretz Yisrael before the final redemption. So we don't know the ins and outs yet. We just know that the Melech HaMashiach is going to kill a very wicked king, a very wicked world leader called Armilus. Romulus, was the first king of the Roman Empire. So this Armilus, represents the Roman Empire, and we today, the Jews in exile in our Golos, we are considered to be in Golos Romi or Golos Edom, but that's one of the names of the Golos we're in the Golos of Rome, because Rome destroyed the second Beis Hamikdash, and while many things have happened since then, and the Roman Empire is just on the dustbed of history, they continue to be identified as Golos Romi. There are many reasons for that. We are in Golos Romi. And there's this, therefore, when we talk about the ultimate Geula and being removed from Golos Romi, we talk about redemption from the exile of Rome. And since the first king of Rome was Romulus, we continue to speak about Mashiach coming to defeat and kill Romulus or end the Golos of Rome. This idea of killing this Russia, Armilus, I'd like you to turn to page 102. And we're going to skip a few psukim, which we'll come back to next week. I'm skipping these psukim so that we can see this pasuk today, because it's going to affect and be involved in our Midos lesson today, Midos Shir, and the Lag BaOmer discussion we'll have. The pasuk says, pasuk Yud Gimel on page 102, that when Mashiach comes, V'sara kines Ephraim, V'sara Yehuda Yikaresu. Ephraim lo yikani es Yehuda, Yehuda lo yotzos Ephraim. We know historically that the northern kingdom split, the north and the south split when Rechavam ben Shlomo was king. David, Shlomo, Rechavam was the king over the Jewish people. There were problems, the Jewish people had certain problems with Rechavam. He was a high tax king, there were other issues. And in the face of those issues, there was a mini revolt. And during this mini revolt, a new king was appointed, the Rebbeinu Shalom selected him, and that king we know is Yeravam ben Nevat. Yeravam ben Nevat became the king of the northern kingdom. Eretz Yisrael was split. There was a northern kingdom that had what we call Malchei Yisrael, the Jewish kingdom, and the southern kingdom was called Malchei Yehuda, the Judean kingdom. And they had kings. This went on for many years. The first Beis HaMikdash stood for 410 years. Shlomo HaMelech was king for 40 years, and then Rechavam. So maybe 370, 360, that's a lot of years, where the north was split from the south. The first northern kingdom king was Yeravam ben Nevat, who came from Shevet Ephraim. And the king in the south, of course, was Rechavam, a scion of David. And so the northern kingdom becomes associated with Ephraim. The southern kingdom obviously is associated with Yehuda. And they're at loggerheads. And the stories that we learned about, the historical events we learned about in Sefer Malachim, and we'll continue to see in Yeshaya and Yirmiyah discussed, is this terrible hate that eventually developed between the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, to the point where sometimes the kings in the north, who were Jewish kings, they would actually team up with the Gentile kings and try to invade the southern kingdom and take over Yerushalayim. That's the saddest thing you can imagine, that a Jewish king, whatever he is, would team up with a goy and try to conquer Yerushalayim. But that is unfortunately the history of the northern southern kingdom. And so the northern kingdom is many times referred to as Ephraim, because Yeravam ben Nevat came from Ephraim. The southern kingdom is called Yehuda because it continued to be ruled until the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. It was always a descendant of David. So the Pasuk Yud Gimel says that when Mashiach comes, V'sara kines Ephraim v'tzara Yehudi karesu. Ephraim lo yakane es Yehuda. Ephraim will no longer be jealous of Yehuda. Yehuda lo yotzes Ephraim, and Yehuda will not harass or oppress Ephraim. In other words, there'll be peace. Jews will be able to walk hand in hand. There will not be a northern kingdom, a southern kingdom. There'll be only one kingdom with a scion of the Davidic dynasty ruling over the Bnei Yisrael and ruling over the world. Rashi opens us up to the conversation we're going to have in Masechta Midos in a few moments, and the Lag BaOmer discussion. Rashi says, Ephraim lo yakane es Yehuda. Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David lo yakanu zeh bazeh. If you're not familiar with the concept, if you are familiar with the concept, there is a concept of Trei Mashiachin. There's not one Mashiach. There are two Mashiachin. The Ramchal, who we'll take a look at later today in the Das Tavunos, the Ramchal wrote excessively about this. Who is Mashiach ben Yosef? What does he accomplish? Why do you need two Mashiachs for? We always think about Mashiach ben David, but there are two Mashiachs, Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. One is a scion of the family of Ephraim, which means he comes from Rachel, and Mashiach ben David is a scion of Yehuda, and he comes from Leah. Yehuda was a son of Leah, and Ephraim was a son of Yosef, who comes from Rachel. And these two houses of the Jewish people, which for so long were in bitter competition with each other, the house of Leah and the house of Rachel. The house of Leah, remember, sold Yosef as a slave, and there's been this terrible conflict between the house of Joseph, the house of Leah, and the house of Rachel, and this has its beginnings in the selling of Yosef, and eventually becomes the split in the Malchus Yisrael in the north, Yeravam ben Nevat from Ephraim, and the Malchus Yehuda in the south. That split between the Shvatim, between Yosef, the children of Rachel and the children of Leah that eventually turns into two kingdoms. And that was never healed. That wound, that split was never healed. Mashiach is going to come to heal. One of the things, the great things going to accomplish is that Ephraim and Yehuda will be able to walk hand in hand and cooperate with each other in making the world a better place, instead of competing with each other for who will get credit for it, instead of competing with each other about who is going to be at the forefront of it. That's what Yeshaya is prophesizing. When Mashiach comes, Ephraim lo yakane es Yehuda, v'Yehuda lo yatzos Ephraim. There'll be no competition between the two. Rashi's comment again, Mashiach ben Yosef, u'Mashiach ben David, lo yakanu zeh b'zeh. Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David will not be jealous of each other. They'll be able to work hand in hand to bring the Geula Shalema for the Jewish people and for the world. And we're going to turn now to Masechta Midas, and we're going to see this concept of Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef right in the Mishnah, Hashgacha Pratis, that comes up for today's learning.